Your Bibles to Hebrews 11. Hebrews 11. Really enjoyed getting back into like these biblical, these foundational truths of faith, and have enjoyed kind of going back to, I call them Bible stories of the Bible, Christian kids' church of the Bible. First thing you learn about Adam and Eve, Noah, Cain and Abel. Get Sunday school teachers that make songs about murder in children's church. Cain killing Abel, and all the kids sing it like it's the best thing ever. But I've enjoyed kind of getting back to this, and so today we're talking about Noah. Thanks, Al, for seeing the humor in that. I appreciate the one person that... I mean, if you didn't have a Sunday school teacher that made songs about Cain killing Abel, how good was your Sunday school teacher? 11:7, let's go. This is a tough room today. All right. By faith, Pastor Mike tells jokes and people laugh. By faith, Noah, when warned about things not yet seen, in holy fear, built an ark to save his family. And by his faith, he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness that is in keeping with faith. Noah did two things that I find highly commendable, and he walked out two things in faith that I want to glean from today. The first thing is he believed God's warning about something that had never happened before. And the second thing he did was he built something that no one had ever done before. He heeded God's warning about something that never happened before, and he built something that no one had ever built before. He did something that no one had ever done before. This time of year, what was it? Was it Tuesday or Wednesday that we got our first snow? I never believe people when they say it's going to snow for the first time. Like, to me, I'm just in denial about it. So when the weatherman gets up there in late October, early November and says, well, it's going to snow this week, in my mind, that just doesn't compute. I don't believe it. I'm in denial about it. And every time that the person is right, every time that it does snow, I get angry about it. Even though it happens to me every single year, I still get angry because in my mind, I live in denial that snow is not going to happen, that it's too early for snow, and this year was no different. I was angry walking around trick-or-treating with my children, and snow is coming down. Even though they warned us it would happen, even though they told us it would happen, even though we live in Buffalo and it basically happens every year. We're the only place in America, it feels like, where you have to plan your trick-or-treating outfit based on if it's going to snow or not. Everyone else gets to wear shorts and have a great time, but Buffalo, we have to have winter coats as part of our costumes. But I get mad every single year because I don't believe anyone that says it's going to snow the first time it snows, and I still get angry. And that's why I admire Noah so much. Because God told Noah his plans, and it never happened before. Now, I'm not going to stand up here and argue with you whether it had rained or not, because I don't really care. That's not the point of the story. Maybe it rained before God, flooded the earth. Maybe it didn't. But I promise you, it never flooded. The earth never flooded. There was never a cataclysmic event where all but one family was killed off. There was never an event where someone needed a boat to save their family with. And God says to Noah, hey, I'm about to do this thing that I've never done before. No one has ever seen it. It's going to happen. It's going to be really bad. And what I need you to do is now build a boat. And I feel like if I can't even believe the weatherman when he tells me it's going to snow, do I even have the faith like Noah did to believe that this was going to happen? Enough to act on it the way that Noah did. He didn't know it was coming. He didn't know what it looked like. He didn't know how to plan for it. How many times have you been in life when it seemed uncertain, when you didn't know what was coming, when you didn't know what God had next for you? How many times has God asked you to do something, spoken to you, put you in a position where you had to act by faith and you had no clue why? You had no clue what was going to happen next. And a lot of people say history repeats itself. So even in like the earth, even like in Buffalo, I knew it snowed last year. So why don't I believe it's going to snow this year? But Noah had never seen a flood before. He'd never seen enough water to make a boat move. And so Noah heeded God's warning, even though there was no historical precedent in his life or in history to prepare him for this. And that's why, in my opinion, Noah stands out in Hebrews, because he heeded God's warning, even though there was no historical data or evidence to back up what God was saying. And I was thinking about, like, what has this looked like in my life? So what could I relate to? Remember Y2K? Remember Y2K, 1999, all of us living in fear that all the computers and all electricity and everything would just disappear when that clock struck midnight on January 1st, 2000? Remember the uncertainties you felt, or the uncertainty that our nation felt, or that the world felt? Like, they'd have these interviews and these really smart people would get on TV and they'd try to predict what was going to happen, or people would get up there and try to qualm your fears about, oh, it's going to be okay, don't worry about it. But I mean, look at what people did. Some people, they bought tons of food. My in-laws bought a basement full of canned goods. And they ate on those canned goods for about 7 years. And they had a party when they ate their last canned good from Y2K. Some people, took off all the stuff from their computers because they thought computers were going to like rise up and become living creatures and kill you or something. I don't know, but they just decided that they were going to get everything off their computers and unplug their computers, and all the computers were just going to become evil. Some people bought a lot of guns and ammo because they thought that people were just going to go crazy for some reason. Other people took all their money out of the banks because they thought that banks weren't going to be able to prepare for this. And so they took all their money out of the banks and they brought it home and hid it in their mattress. Remember the amount of uncertainty and unknowing and the angst of that? But there was also kind of like a little bit of an excitement to see, okay, let's go back to like when, there was no law. Because we all thought that it was just going to go crazy January 1st, 2000. You want to know what Noah would have done if he was alive that year? He would have done what God told him to do. He would have done what God told him to do, because Noah was the kind of guy who had the faith to look uncertainty and take God's direction, even though God didn't tell him what was going to be the end result, even though God didn't tell him what was going to happen eventually. Noah would have just done exactly what God told him to do, because he had that kind of faith to not know what had happened before, or what was going to happen in the future, or how long it was going to take. The unknown, God giving us direction without the whole picture, life throwing something new at us. These are all things that really scare us. And there's two different kinds of people. There's those kinds of people who live life without fear, and they become paralyzed because of the unknown. They become paralyzed not having the whole picture. They become paralyzed when something new gets thrown at them, and it takes them a while to process and figure out how they're going to figure it out and how they're going to happen. Or they start to research history, or they look back in their life and say, well, this happened before. So there's the kind of person that fear grips them and paralyzes them and stops them from moving in faith. Or there's people who live by faith and they set out and do what God asked them to do without needing any more kind of information. And what kind of person do you want to be? I want to be the Noah kind. The second thing that he did was he did something that no one ever did before. It's easy to do something that you've seen someone accomplish before. It's easy to walk into something that already has momentum, that's been built, something that's successful, something that's growing, something that you have a precedent for. It's easy to walk into those things, even in the Christian realm. And so that's why Sunday church has become such a comfort for people, because Sunday church, even in our Christian faith, like, we see that as just the basic solid requirement of Christianity, is going to church every Sunday. And the reason we fall into that routine and that repetition, and we find comfort in that, is because the same thing that happened last Sunday is going to be the same thing that happened this Sunday, and the same thing that happened next Sunday. And all of us can kind of check off the requirement for our Christian faith by just going to church every Sunday and doing the same thing every week. And that's why no one really walks out Monday through Saturday anything different as far as their faith goes, because it's something that they now have to have the faith to do on their own. And so as a pastor and as a leader and as someone who wants to get people out of that routine and out of that rhythm, I love when I hear stories about people who step out in faith. This last week, my son Jaden came home. He's like, "Hey, Dad, guess what?" He said, "I prayed for somebody at school today." He said there was a kid there who didn't know what kind of faith he had, and he didn't know what he believed in. And he asked me what I believed in, and I told him, and then I prayed that God would give him the same kind of faith I have. And I wanted to jump through the roof when I heard that. Because it's not like he sees that anywhere else in his school. He was probably the only kid that day in that school who prayed for someone to have the same kind of faith he did. That's the kind of thing that Noah did. That's the kind of stuff that God calls us to. And I want you to think about the process of the ark. Like, pull up from the 10,000-foot view and think about what God really asked Moses to do. He built something not knowing what it was. He had no picture of what this ark would look like. It's not like you go to IKEA and you get the box and it has all the parts in it and it's got a picture of it and it's got the step-by-step directions of what it looks like. Or YouTube, exactly. God told him to build something he had never seen before and had no idea how to build. He didn't know that when he built it, it would actually float. Think about that. He didn't know that when he built it and when he covered it and whatever he covered it to insulate it, that it would literally keep the water out. He had no clue that when something that big sits on top of water, that it actually stays afloat and stays up. If you told me that something that was shaped like that would float in water, I would say I'm not getting on that thing. But the only reason I get on a boat that's shaped like this is because I've seen it happen before. But if you're the first one stepping on that boat that's somehow shaped like this, made of wood and tar, and you're going to tell me that thing's going to save my life, I'm going to tell you no. No, it's not. I'm just going to not get on that boat and take my chances. This is the overall picture of what God is asking Noah to do. Here's another little thing that jumped out at me. In Genesis 7, it says that Noah got on the boat, and he got on the boat with his family. And this boat was 3 levels. So picture a cruise ship. That's the size boat we're talking about here. Now, Noah got on the boat, and imagine how big the door must have been. Yeah, Noah couldn't close that by himself. He probably couldn't even close it with his 2 sons or 3 sons that were with him. And how do you close a boat door from the inside if you don't have pulleys and machines to do it? So Noah gets on the boat. God tells him to. And the water starts coming. And now all of a sudden the door's still open. Right? Like, we skip over these little details of the story. But that's the first question I'm asking God before I get on that boat. Hey, God, I was doing the math, and this thing weighs probably a couple 100 pounds, and I don't think I can close this from the inside. So how are we going to do that? And again, I probably wouldn't have even gotten on the boat. I probably would have been like, hey, Shem, you drew the last straw. You got to be the odd man out. Try to shut this door so we all live. Like, I would have tried to figure that out on my own before I got on the boat. I would have argued with God, hey, God, how are we going to shut this thing? I would have needed that answer before I got on the boat. The Bible says Noah walked on, and then Genesis 7 says that God shut the door. God shut the door. Here's the deal. Here's what I learned from that. Here's what God spoke to me about that. He said, I'm going to give you solutions and problems that are bigger than anything you can handle, that it's going to take my hand to shut the door. And he said to me when I was preparing this sermon, he said, the things that I'm sending your way as a lifeline are things that might not make sense and might not be possible and are going to be new that you've never seen before. So that when they work, it's only by my glory that they'll work. And you guys have been in the same boat that I have been in, where God has sent you an answer to your prayers, and you're like, that's not what I prayed for, God. That's not what I want. I asked you to do this, and you're giving me this. And I've prayed for things. How many of you know that if God would have said to me, I'm going to flood the earth, the first thing I would have done is, Lord, please don't do that. I would have prayed over and over and over and over and over and over and over again that God wouldn't flood the earth. And then when those waters came and he didn't answer my prayer, the answer to my prayer was no, I would have looked at that ark and I would have been really, really ticked off. God, I prayed for this every day. I wanted this. I prayed that you would save the earth. And now I got to go live on that thing. And guess what? Noah got on that boat having no clue how long he would be on that boat. Some of you are asking God to take you out of a season of your life that you've been in and you have no idea how long you're going to be in it, and it's really starting to make you angry. Moses had no clue how long. God didn't tell him. And it was a long time. It was a long time that he was on that boat. So God asks him to build something he never built before. Step on the boat, close a door that he never could have closed, didn't know if it would work, and didn't know how long it would be. Does that sound familiar to anyone else? Can anyone else relate to that other than me? And so many times in the Bible, people, they had faith in God that he would do his part. Moses at the Red Sea, David versus Goliath, Peter in prison. But so many times there were questions, right? So many times there were questions that people had too. Like Isaac carrying the wood. Hey, Dad, where's the sacrifice? Esther going into the king's court uninvited, not knowing if she would live or not. Ananias praying for Saul, not knowing that as soon as he received his eyesight, he would kill him right there on the spot, not knowing that if God was going to transform him or not. You and I ask so many similar questions. God, how do you expect me to do this? How do you expect me to give that much? How can I afford that? How can I say yes to that? How long is this going to take? How long do I have to endure this? And the faith that Noah had just to step on the boat was amazing. Because the very thing that God sends us to save us, the thing that gets us through life, the thing that changes our life, can sometimes be the scariest thing that we ever do. And here's what God is asking for us. He's asking for us to do something we've never seen before. He's asking to do something that we have no knowledge if it will work or not. He's asking that we do something that just might kill us or really harm us or be detrimental to our health or our finances or the people around us or our reputation unless God comes through. He's asking us to do things that have no time frame or duration, that you have no idea if it's going to work or when it's going to work. And if you're not willing to live by these terms, if you're not willing to do that as a Christian, you might as well just do what some people did back in Y2K, which was buy a bunch of food, store up a bunch of stuff, get a bunch of guns that you think are going to save you in the end, and bury yourself in a hole until you die. You might as well just do that. Because living any other way, there's no halfway with God. There's no halfway with faith. There's no halfway in living life for God. It's all or nothing. Or you can build whatever version of the ark that God is calling you to do and ride on the waves that He sends you. And He's going to blow your mind and take you to new places and show you new things and open up new seasons of life. And that's why Noah makes the Hebrews Faith Hall of Fame. Because that's exactly what he did. So Lord, help us. Help us that when you talk to us, when you put us in certain situations, when you give us certain tasks and missions and projects and things to do, that even if there's no precedent, even if we don't know what it looks like, even if we've never seen it before, even if we've never had to try it before, that we would have the faith that Noah had to step out and be obedient and just do it. And help us to be like Noah, that when we have no clue if it'll work, we have no clue how long it will take, we have no clue if it'll even be successful or not. We just do it. Pray that you would fill us with that kind of faith. Lord, I receive that from you. That even in walking in this building every week and not knowing what's next, not knowing why you brought us here, not knowing what we're doing here, not knowing that it doesn't make sense that we have a perfectly fine church building down the road, but we're meeting here. Lord, this is the boat that you have us in. And we're going to ride your waves and trust you. So what is it in your life? Think about that for a minute before we close. What boat is God asking you to get on? What's He asking you to do that doesn't make sense? What have you been reluctant to do? What have you not done? Or whatever it is that you're calling us to, we say yes to. We step on the boat. We let you take care of the rest. In Jesus' name, amen.